I have been in this bed for 11 weeks, and I have watched a lot of people walk through this ward. Orderlies, attendings, specialists who never look you in the eye, night nurses who check the chart from the doorway and move on. You get a feel for people when you're stuck horizontal, and there's nothing to do but watch. It's the same skill I used for 22 years in the Army. Read the room, read the person, know who you can count on before the situation demands an answer. I knew about Nurse Cavett inside the first 3 days. She came into my room at 6 in the morning with a portable spirometer and a cup of bad coffee, set the coffee on my tray without being asked, and said, "Mr. Kowalski, your overnight numbers dropped. I'd like to run a few assessments before rounds." Not "how are we feeling?" Not a chart glance from the door. She sat down, ran the assessments herself, and wrote 2 pages of notes that I later found out she gave directly to the pulmonologist before he even clocked in. She was thorough. The way soldiers are thorough. The way people are when they understand that carelessness costs something real. She had a quietness about her that wasn't shyness, it was control, the kind you earn. Telling you this so you understand why. What happened on a Tuesday morning in March changed something in me that I did not know could still be changed. His name was Delgado, Hector Delgado, room 14, the VA wing, 3 beds down from mine, former Marine, 61 years old, end-stage pulmonary fibrosis. He had been on a slow decline for 4 months, the kind of decline where everyone in the ward knows where it's going, and nobody says it out loud. His daughter came Tuesdays and Fridays. He watched baseball in the evenings with the volume low. He'd been around long enough that the nurses knew his coffee order and the orderlies knew to wake him before 7. Cavett had been his primary nurse for 6 weeks. A Tuesday, his daughter's day, his numbers dropped hard and fast at the start of second shift. I heard the monitors through the wall. I heard Cavett's voice, steady, calling for the respiratory team. She had been 40 minutes from the end of her shift when it started. And I know this because she told me later, though she said it the way you say, a thing that doesn't much matter. She did not leave at shift change. She stayed. She stayed through the handoff, talked the incoming nurse through every metric, and then stayed beside him while his daughter held his other hand. The respiratory team came and went. The attending came and went. Cavett did not go. She adjusted his oxygen. She talked to his daughter in a low voice. She held the space in that room with the same calm she brought to everything. When Hector Delgado died at 8:47 in the evening, she was still there. I know all this because Darnell, the overnight orderly, told me the next morning with the look of a man who had witnessed something he hadn't expected to see in this building. Darnell also told me was what happened after. Gerald Pruitt, the hospital administrator, had been building a file on Cavett for 2 months. Repeated protocol deviations, he called them. Staying past shift. Spending excess time with terminal patients. Failure to execute clean handoffs. I don't know what kind of man looks at that list and sees a problem. But Pruitt was that kind of man. He had a budget, and he had a system, and Nurse Cavett had the habit of making both of them feel inadequate. He called her into his office at 8 the next morning. I was already awake. I sleep badly since my second deployment and have made my peace with it. Darnell had told me what was coming, and I watched through my open door as Cavett walked down the hall toward Pruitt's office. With the same unhurried stride she always had, she didn't look like a woman bracing for a fight. She looked like a woman who had already decided what she was and didn't need anyone else to confirm. 15 minutes later, she walked back out. She went to the nurse's station, took a cardboard box from behind the desk. Already there, I noticed, meant Pruitt had planned this in advance, and began putting her things in it. A framed photo, her stethoscope, a small plant she'd kept on the corner of the station counter for months. She did it without rushing and without drama. Security arrived before she'd finished. 2 men in the gray uniforms I'd seen before but never thought much about. One of them put a hand on her arm in the direction of the lobby. She picked up the box and walked now. There was a moment, right then, as she passed my door. She looked in. Not for help, not for sympathy, just the way you check a patient when you pass. Out of habit or maybe out of something more than habit. And she gave me a nod, a small one. The kind that says, "I'm all right, don't worry about me." And that is when I saw it. The box was not quite closed, and the photo had shifted, and beneath it, half visible, was the dark velvet corner of a metal case. I had seen enough of those cases in my life to know exactly what I was looking at. I also so recognized the shape of the suspension ribbon. I had seen that ribbon on 2 men in my unit, and you do not forget it. I reached for my phone before she had cleared the nurse's station. I called Frank Delaney. Frank is a retired first sergeant who lives 40 minutes north of here and has more connections in the veteran community of this county than the VA itself. I told him what I'd seen and what had just happened. Frank said 3 words, "Give me 10, and hung up. I called my nephew in the VA liaison office, just in case. Then I got out of bed, put on my robe, found my slippers, and walked to the lobby as fast as a man with compromised lung function can walk. She was still there. One of the security men had gone to get something from the desk, and the other stood a respectful distance away, and Cavett stood near the main doors with her box under one arm, looking out at the parking lot with the expression of a person waiting for a bus. Patient, not defeated. Just waiting. I was about to speak when the first car pulled into the lot, then the second, then, within the space of 2 minutes, more cars than I could easily count. A van from the VFW hall on Route 9, 2 vehicles with base stickers on the windshields, a pickup with a flag decal, a woman in scrubs who I later learned had served 2 tours as a medic before nursing school and had gotten a call from Frank's network within the 4 minutes of my call to him. They came through the doors in a quiet stream, and they were not loud about it. Some of them were in their 70s. Some were younger. Several were in wheelchairs. 2 of them I recognized from the VA wing. Men I had seen Cavett bring ice water to on her rounds. Men who had no family within 3 states, and who she had sat with during the long hours that institutions tend to leave unattended. One old man in a Korean War veteran's cap moved with 2 canes and would not be helped to a seat. He stood. They filled the lobby. They did not shout. They did not wave signs. They arranged themselves in the way that people arrange themselves when they have purpose and do not need to be told what it is. Within 20 minutes, there were 200 of them. I was watching Pruitt. He had come out of his office at some point. I imagine someone told him there was something happening in his lobby, and he stood on the mezzanine, above us, hands on the railing, looking down. He had the expression of a man who had just understood that he had made a very serious miscalculation, and there was no administrative procedure to correct it. What happened next, I will not forget. A man named Cal Whitmore, I learned his name afterward, stepped forward from the crowd. He was in his late 30s, broad across the shoulders, and he walked with a slight hitch in his left leg that I recognized as the gait of a man who had spent time with a wound that hadn't fully healed. He stopped in front of Cavett and looked at her. For a moment he said, "You don't remember me. Forward Surgical, Coast Province, December. You kept pressure on my side for 40 minutes while the medevac worked out its routing." She looked at him. Her expression did not break. "Something moved through it," he said. "There were 11 of us that came out of that week. I found 9 of them this morning." He turned slightly and indicated the crowd behind him with one hand. The other 2 couldn't travel. They called. I don't know how Frank's network produced 200 people in 40 minutes. I don't know how many of them Cavett had actually treated, and how many had simply come, because the word had moved through the community the way it does when a debt is owed and someone is finally there to receive it. What I know is that every person in that lobby knew exactly who was standing by those doors with a cardboard box, and not one of them moved aside. Cal Whitmore put his hand over his heart, slowly, the way you do something once and mean it to last. Behind him, one by one and then in a wave, 200 people did the same. She stood there and took it. The box under her arm, her badge gone, her name not on anyone's schedule tomorrow. She stood straight and level-eyed and did not look away from any of them. Pruitt left the mezzanine railing at some point. I did not watch him go. What I watched was the room. The entire lobby of Crestwood Regional Medical Center on a Tuesday morning in March, standing still with their hands over their hearts for a woman they would not let walk out that door. And I watched Cavett hold her composure through every second of it, the way she had held it through everything, because that was simply who she was. She was reinstated before noon. I don't know the details of how that conversation went, and I don't need to. What I know is this. I have seen a lot of people walk through a lot of rooms. I have served with men who would have given anything for a medic, with half her steadiness in half the situations she never once mentioned. I spent 11 weeks watching her, and I still didn't know the full measure of her until 200 other people walked through a door to tell me. I was wrong to not already know. That's the thing about quiet people who are very good at what they do. They don't advertise it. They just show up, every shift, and they do the work, and they stay when staying is the right thing. And they walk out when they're made to, and they don't break. Not once. Not in front of anyone. She came by my room that afternoon, same as always, spirometer in hand. She set the coffee down first.